Morning all. First of all, listen, thanks very much for coming along this morning. And the first thing I want to do is I just want to extend apologies on behalf of my colleague John McGuinness, who's delayed. But as you will know, if you've been following the Shane O'Farrell story, John has done a huge amount of work in respect of it. Can I just tell you the reason that we're here is because, as you know, Fianna Fáil is using its private members' time this evening to have a motion seeking to call on the government to establish a commission of investigation in respect of the death and Garda investigation and subsequent events in respect of the death of Shane O'Farrell. As many of you will know, Shane was a young 23-year-old man who was killed on the 2nd of August 2011 when he was knocked down on his bicycle whilst he was cycling along the N2 road just outside Carrickmacross. His death was a terrible tragedy for his loving family, but more importantly it was a terrible tragedy for him. He had his whole life ahead of him and he lost it on that August evening. Obviously there are very many tragic deaths that happen in Ireland, and not all of them, the vast majority of them, don't merit debate in Dáil Éireann or indeed a public inquiry. The reason why we think Shane's death merits a commission of investigation is because of very particular circumstances relating to what happened prior to his death and indeed subsequent to it. It's a complicated issue, but can I just give you a very brief overview as to where we think the heart of the public issue rests. The individual who was responsible for knocking down Shane was a man called Zygamanski Grudziuska, who was pleaded guilty to 4 charges in respect of the accident that caused Shane's death. I suppose the issue that is particularly of concern to us is that on the 11th of January 2011, which was some 7 months before Shane died, this individual was convicted of theft and fraud offences in Monaghan Circuit Court. On that occasion, his case was adjourned for a year, but the judge said that if he was involved or was in committing any further theft or fraud offences, he was to be brought back before him and he would serve a term of imprisonment. He would be sentenced. He was given bail whilst the case was adjourned. Subsequently then, in May 2011, the same individual was convicted and pleaded guilty to an offence of theft in RD. Now the question is, why was he not brought back before the Monaghan Circuit Court, and at that stage he would have been imprisoned in respect of those particular issues? Not only was there that offence in May, but subsequent in June he was convicted of possession of heroin in Carrickmacross, and in July he was convicted of further theft offences in Newry. So the issue that stands out, and it's an issue which the O'Farrell family and indeed the public require an explanation for, is why wasn't these previous conviction brought to the attention of the judge, and why was it that this man who had breached his bail bond didn't have bail revoked? There are many other aspects to it, but that's the core of the issue, and that's why we think there deserves to be a commission of investigation in respect of it, and that's why we're calling on the government to do so. We hope that we're going to get support from other parties and independents within Dáil Éireann. Very many of them have been supportive of the campaign that was initiated by Shane's mother, Lucia O'Farrell, and all the family are supportive of it. I suppose the reason why it has particular focus now is that in April of this year, GSOC produced a report in respect of the Garda investigation into the investigation of Shane's death and the offences that led to it. The report, in my opinion, was inadequate. It still has not provided an explanation to the family as to why these issues weren't brought back to the attention of Monaghan Circuit Court so that the individual involved could have been incarcerated. I think the family is entitled to accountability in respect to this matter. They haven't got accountability yet, and hopefully by the establishment of a commission of investigation that accountability will be provided. I'm sorry for going on a bit long, but it is slightly a complicated issue, and I wanted to just give you an overview as to our thinking. But Lisa and I are happy to take any questions that you may have in respect.
Jim, the government's been aware of some of the irregularities around the handling of this case for a long time. They seem to have rebuffed any suggestion of a commission investigation for the last 7 years at least. Do you have any suspicion or intelligence as to why they've turned it down from it?
Yeah, I think their usual response is that they say, well, there's a GSOC investigation ongoing in respect to this matter, and they say, well, we need to await the outcome of the GSOC investigation. Well, as I said to you, the GSOC investigation commenced in 2012. We got a report, a semi-report, in 2018. It has taken 6 years for us to get part of the answer from GSOC, but we still haven't got answers in respect to the central issue that I've outlined there. I'm hoping, however, the government will recognise that there's an inevitability to there being a proper investigation in respect to this, and that they may accede to our request.
Jim, if we're saying that, that we don't have faith in the GSOC report, then is there not a wider debate that needs to be had over why GSOC is not producing reports that are robust enough or satisfactory?
Yeah, well, in fairness to GSOC, they complain about resources, and they have just one limited function, I suppose, which is to investigate complaints about An Garda Síochána. But I think people who want a thorough report in respect of an issue such as this, they expect to see more than an 18-page substantive report. That's what it is. There's 18 pages on the issues and complaints raised by the family. In fairness to GSOC, I don't know if it has the ability to compel, or doesn't have the compellability powers of a commission of investigation, but the family haven't been given accountability, and the public hasn't been yet given accountability as a result of the GSOC report.
So is this something you commit to in the future government, that if Fianna Fáil is
Yeah.
part of the future government you commit to?
Yeah, we would, Michal. We said that before. Like, in fairness, we said that even before I was elected, or Lisa was elected to the Dáil. We said that we would commit to the establishment of a commission of investigation, and we'll stick with that, you know.
Lisa, what do you make of the latest stalling of the Brexit talks? It seems now that we've reached a bit of a crucial juncture, because Mr Barnier says that you can't really have any contingency arrangement that applies to the whole UK, but obviously the DUP won't accept one that doesn't. So it looks like we're heading towards a pretty grim scenario.
Yeah, I think we're in a particularly crucial time. Obviously the June Council meeting is coming up shortly. The Commons will vote today and tomorrow on House of Lords amendments. So it is a crucial time. I think the backstop, the EU have always been very clear, as have Ireland, that the backstop was in relation to Northern Ireland only and wasn't to apply to the UK as a whole. That isn't something that arose in the last number of days or the last couple of weeks. That's been very clear from the outset. I think what we've seen last December was a backstop that was oversold by the Irish government. We didn't get what we thought we were getting. It wasn't cast iron, it wasn't bulletproof. It's very much still on the table for negotiation. The idea now that we will be looking at resolving that issue in October does provide concern, because I think we're now heading towards crunch time. The idea that we will be making these very crucial decisions at the 11th hour when pressure is on to conclude the withdrawal treaty, I think leaves us in a vulnerable position. And I think that was a mistake on behalf of the Irish government to allow that to unfold. There doesn't appear to be a cohesive approach between An Tánaiste and An Taoiseach. Simon Coveney initially very strong in saying that June was the deadline. The Taoiseach then saying October was the deadline. Simon Coveney seeming to then come along and say, well, October will do him as well. Minister McEntee just last week, when asked what significant progress meant to the Irish government, it was the first time that we heard a response on that. She said that text on a page would be sufficient, but that was quite convenient because we had just gotten text on a page, and up until that point I had been questioning the Tánaiste for about 2 months to ask him what he thought significant progress meant to him and what we were actually looking for. So I think we're at a very difficult stage. We don't want to see the UK fall off a cliff edge. We want to support our neighbours. We want to see a good deal for the UK. But a very difficult negotiation when I think the UK themselves are not entirely sure what they're seeking.
Lisa, given, as you said, the fact that we are at a crunch stage now, would you agree with the former Taoiseach indicating, who came out yesterday and suggested we need another EU Council before October?
I think I would have no difficulty with that. You know, I mean, there are obviously meetings going on in the background all of the time. The task force is operating every week. I would have no difficulty with an additional council meeting. Anything that can be done to get this over the line, to conclude the talks and have a withdrawal treaty in place by the deadline, I would welcome. But certainly I don't think there's been a lack of progress from the UK's or the EU's perspective and the Irish perspective. We really are waiting to see what the UK is going to do, and obviously today's votes and tomorrow's votes really are the culmination of a lot of talking for the last year or so. So we'll have to see what the outcome of that is.
Is the EU then so maybe taking too much of a softly approach with the UK at this stage, and that's why things have dragged on?
I don't think the EU has taken a softly approach. It's been quite stern in saying we need a backstop. There is no withdrawal treaty without a backstop. There is no transition period without a withdrawal treaty. So the EU has been quite clear in what they're seeking and how they want to progress matters. The UK is obviously pushing to talk about future trade. That's not part of the withdrawal process. So I really don't think that the approach has been too soft from the EU's perspective. We have to, of course, negotiate, and that means being fair to all parties involved. And I do think that the EU has been fair to the UK.
Do you think, Lisa, that we're in a position where the Irish government should look for the pause button to be pressed in a few weeks' time if there isn't something more between now and the summit?
I suppose in relation to the pause button, that was something that was advocated by the Tánaiste. 2 months ago. He said he was willing to press the pause button if sufficient progress was not made in June. The very reason that I pressed him on what significant progress meant to him and the Irish government is because pressing the pause button puts in jeopardy the withdrawal treaty and puts in jeopardy the transition period. And my own discussions when I went to Brussels a couple of weeks ago and met with business interests here in Ireland, with Chambers Ireland, for example, with IBEC, they need that transition period. So if we're going to threaten to press the pause button, we need to be very sure what the consequences of that might be. So I'm not suggesting that we press the pause button. I think we need to work with the UK, our closest neighbours. We need to assist them in getting to a place where they can actually find agreement that suits their parliaments, their citizens, but also allows for a deal that facilitates the Irish needs in terms of the border and trade north and south and east and west. So I think the pause button is a matter for the Taoiseach as to whether he thinks that's still a good idea, because that was his suggestion.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.